Hello, my friends. This is Pastor Don Moore. I want to do something a little bit different. I put a thing on YouTube about Muslims and Jews not being cousins. And I got a response. Most were positive. Most people thanked me for the information. But one of the responders totally disagreed, and I'm hoping that he'll tune back in and see this explanation so he will understand. Quite often, we have a line that gets crossed, and the line I want to explain to you is very simply this. Sometimes we can get scientific, historical, archaeological information, but because of our heart, because of our emotional position, we don't receive it. That doesn't change the histocracy of it or the accuracy of it, because we have an emotional connection. So what I want to do is to repeat, for the sake of love and understanding, I need the listening audience, I need you to be able to separate the difference. For example, you may not like hot sauce, but if I was giving a talk about the contents of hot sauce and what's in it, you could, because of your emotional connection, you could reject the information of what hot sauce is made out of because you particularly don't like hot sauce. And that's what happened with this particular person that listened. He assumed that I was attacking his personal relationship, a Muslim with another Jew. They like to call each other cousins. They have familiarity and relationship, and that's wonderful. That's a very wonderful thing. But that does not change the histocracy of the way I'm using the term cousin. I'm using it in the area and the way that people say, well, these people are cousins. The fact that in my use of it, there is no emotional connection. I'm just describing a long birth line disconnect that is a fact of history that is accepted by Muslims and by anyone that looks deep into the archaeological question of, are the Jews and the Arab Muslims, are they both descendants of Abraham and of Ishmael? Now, what your emotional connection to that is has nothing to do with the historical record. So we need to just take a minute and mature here. I am not putting down the Jews. I am not putting down the Muslims. I'm not discussing, nor am I interested in your affinity and your love. I have a Muslim imam that traveled with me in my band for years, and he is now an imam of great importance in Dutchess County. I have an affinity for him and a love for his family. For 15 years, my mother in the New York City had Ahmed, who was a Muslim who took care of my mother in the Bronx, New York. So there are Muslims that I have relationships with that I might even go as far as to say I'm a brother to them, a brother in the sense of familiar and having warm emotional feelings to. But nonetheless, that doesn't change the histocracy, that doesn't change the historical record of the fact that Abraham and Ishmael never ventured into Arabia, and never from their children, if we follow the historical root of their children, did they ever birth what later became Muhammad and Islam. There is no connection. And that has nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with the fact that you have a Muslim or a Jewish friend. It has nothing to do with that. It's like reading the history of the United States of America and deciding you don't like Sioux Indians. Don't make those connections. We're not making an emotional connection. We're making a historical connection. And the history is got to be made clear. We have many people that are very confused. The history of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and even Ishmael, whom many Arabs try to build, as Muhammad did, an association that they are descendants of Ishmael. The historical record is null and void in that regard, and there's some myths about it, but there's nothing that can be proven. I took my data from the historical writings of many Muslims and the historical writings that have existed concerning the history of the Middle East. If you want the detailed history, you can get it from my website. You can read the book for free. This is information, it's for free. You can read it. The book is called You Can Handle the Truth. And you can go to my website and click You Can Handle the Truth, and then you can the section on Abraham and the legacy and the descendants. And there are maps that show the places that Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Ishmael traveled to. And it's all documented, and I back it up with all of the historical facts. So the fact that you love this Jewish friend of yours, or the Jewish friend loves you and you consider yourselves cousins, wonderful. No problem with that. That's an emotional thing that has no load on the historical facts. So nonetheless, he wrote me and he says, I totally disagree. I've just watched this with a Jewish cousin, and we both agree that your statement is incorrect. That's impossible. My statement is scientifically, archaeologically correct. You didn't look at the information. You were so blinded by the emotional input that we need to make that separation. It doesn't matter when you say all people are created equal and you don't like your neighbor who maybe is from Lithuania. That emotional impact doesn't change the fact that we have a different heritage and a different upbringing, and therefore we can say all people are created equal on the basis of the rights of constitutional freedom. That we can keep straight, versus I love everybody or I don't. It has nothing to do with it. He says, we both, as Muslim and my friend Jewish, we both say that Muslim and Jews are cousins. Well, you're saying that on an emotional basis because there is no DNA, no genetic information that you can even connect. So that's not going to happen. If we're both the Jews and we say we're cousins, then who am I to say that you're not? Then you make a mistake, my friend, that should never be made. Because someone disagrees with you or shows you something that you emotionally cannot hold, you should not attack them. You shouldn't attack people just because you don't agree with their information. That's how wars are started, and that's how we end up in insanity. The love of Christ, and I don't know if you're a Christian or not, but the love of Christ compels us, even though we may disagree, we still can get along. And so nonetheless, he attacks me and accuses me of not worshiping the one true God. And as a Christian, you don't worship Jesus. We both believe that you should make another video on the subject. I'm making another video right now. I assure you, my friend, if you will look at the information, you will come to agree that scientifically we feel one way, but emotionally you may feel another. How did I come to many of these decisions and things to look? Well, on one of my tours to Israel, my bus driver, Mohammed, who was a Jew, Mohammed and I were sharing many different things. And he brought out two things that caused me to research. He said that he, as a Palestinian, is second generation. And I asked him, well, how many Palestinians are third and fourth generations in the land that we call Israel? How many generations do they go back? And he said, for the most part, very few of them go beyond the third generation. And he says most are all second generation. I said, how can that possibly be? He says, because, he says, me and my people are from Jordan. We came, my father, he said, my father in the first generation, we came to kill the Jews in 1948 when the Jews were taking over the land. And our kings and the dictators from the countries we came promised us the land if we killed the Jews. But we lost that war. We lost the Yom Kippur War. We lost the War of 72 and so forth and so on. And he says, so if you ask almost any Palestinian, they can tell you their roots from Syria or their roots from other Middle Eastern countries. And he says, we are a people who have been left here, dumped here from our other lands. This is a Palestinian speaking. And he says, but there's so many of us now, we want our own country, and we're hoping that Israel will let us stay and give us this land. Now, this is from a Palestinian who lives there. And I asked him, I says, what else would you want? He says, most of us, for example, he's working for a Palestinian bus company that worked with a Jewish tour company. I hired the Jewish tour company. They provided me with a Palestinian bus company. He says, we all really do get along. He says, we get along, but the radicals won't have it. The radicals won't have it. And he says, but I get along very well. And he named the tour guide and so forth, and we get along. So my brothers, my sisters, I encourage you, this getting along and the emotional input with which we love people and we want to get along with them, doesn't change the history of how things happened. The history is one thing, your emotional connection is another. And so, I love you today. I hope you're listening, and I hope you're learning. And you can get this information for free. Go to Pastor Don Moore, PastorDonMoore.org, PastorDonMoore.org, and you can read my books. You can read this information out of the book. You can handle the truth, and I hope you can. I hope you can handle the truth. Your Muslim friend, your Jewish friend, they may feel like you're personally so close that you're cousins. But the histocracy, the archaeological history shows that the Arabs are not descendants of the Jews. Consider that. Think about it. God bless you. Bye-bye.